What's up everyone, John from ARTV. It's time for a review of album number 10 that is not called Satan. I almost just said Satan. It's actually Heaven Upside Down. 10 albums into Marilyn Manson's career. It's crazy to think how they're still actually formulating new things, new ideas, and I really like how Marilyn Manson, obviously the leader of this band, is getting all these fresh ideas and perspectives, and I think a lot of that is thanks to the musical influence of Tyler Bates. He's a composer who he worked with on the show Salem, which Manson also did compose the theme song for, and obviously starred in the show. Marilyn Manson was one of the number one things that was considered taboo to me growing up, obviously from my parents and my Christian school. A Satanist stands pretty much against all of those ideas that we were for. So I wasn't exposed to his music until I discovered it on my own many years later. It was probably honestly with the This Is Halloween cover, and I know that sounds so pathetic to the hardcore fans, but I didn't have access to his music. I grew up in a different time where I couldn't just regularly get on the internet and just search everything up. My parents were late on getting internet as it was and a computer that I could freely use. So Marilyn Manson didn't come into my life until a much later time, but whenever the band did, I definitely welcomed with arms wide open. Even though I don't agree with much of the message that is presented, I think a lot of it is obviously done for shock value. With the original title of Satan, it's obvious that they didn't meet their deadline of Valentine's Day, which Manson actually announced himself all the way back in the summer of 2016. He said Satan, a working title, is coming out Valentine's Day. And while that came and passed, Manson wasn't happy with the finished product, so he kept tweaking. He added some new songs that actually turned out to be quite great that made it onto this album. The title track, Heaven Upside Down, Revelation number 12, that kicks off this album. Love the guitar riffs on that one. And even though, like I said, much of the lyrical message isn't for me, I like listening to it because it's something where I can see his perception and him just trying to get a rise out of people, and it's still working all these years later. If you take everything 100% seriously 100% of the time, you're never going to let yourself listen to anything out of your comfort zone. We Know Where You Fucking Live was released as the lead single, and it came out on September 11th, and yes, there are many political tones to this song. I love it. It's so intense. I love the chorus on this. It's much more intense as an album, and with this track in particular leading the way with a fiery, just screamed, almost howled chorus as Manson screams, "We know where you fucking live," with a strong message to the track. I like that he's much more aggressive on this record as a whole. Dating all the way back to the mid-2000s, it felt like Manson had lost a bit of his edge, and while The Pale Emperor was a welcomed comeback, it was much more soft, almost bluesy inclined, with traces of gothic metal, alternative rock all sprinkled in, and the final mix was good, but it wasn't anything that was amazing me, and it also felt like a new side, and I didn't know if we would ever get Heavy Manson again. And here we are, I'm listening through this, and I'm hearing stuff on Tattooed in Reverse, some electronics that work their way in, and then on Kill For Me, the second single, that is just mesmerizingly catchy in a very odd way, as he sings, "Would you kill for me? Would you go in, shoot somebody in the head for me if that's what it came to? If that's what this boils down to, are you gonna do whatever it takes?" And it's definitely a violent song, and I think that Manson on this record is basically saying, sometimes introspectively, that you love me getting a rise out of you. You love the reaction that you give to my music and me as an icon at this point. And I like that he's confident enough, and even in his older age, still able to say things like this and it have a big effect. I mentioned a variety of sounds, including some electronics, and I think that will throw off some people that don't expect it, but I like how he takes these more modern influences and doesn't feel like he's selling out or following trends. He just manages to work them into the songs, and they spice it up. They're not the entire time, like the backing vocals from a female on Heaven Upside Down. I think it sounds fantastic. Just rounds out that song, and that one in particular is such a hard and heavy hitter. I'm so glad that he took his time with completing this album, and I think that this obviously helped kind of shape the theme of the album overall. I would say there's a loose concept running throughout. Satan, which was originally going to be the title track, actually was salvaged and made into a song that he had been working on for quite a while, and this one, obviously, the whole refrain on it is, "You say God, I say Satan," and he's a well-known Satanist Satanist, and his views come out big time. There's not a lot to speculate about whenever it comes to what this track is about, but what might throw some people for a loop is the opening to this song. You almost hear some hi-hats, a trap-leaning beat perhaps, and it breaks into it with this moody aura, a little bit of a synth glow coming in, and it's strange, but it works. It feels like a very Halloween-y type song, something that would come out in the fall, something that you would listen to while driving through a graveyard, and he captures the mood and the time to release this album perfectly. Honestly, I always feel like an artist knows the best season to release their album, and so many bands, especially lately, have been getting it right, and Manson just nailed it. This is the perfect October album. Saturnalia is a beautiful song that runs for 8 minutes but does not feel that length whatsoever. I think he does a great job of just kind of bringing in a science fiction vibe where he talks about everything from the ancient gods to where he feels in terms of his own personal religious views, and he brings a lot of it into a culmination type song. And I love the instrumental on this because it's very diverse. It can be harsh, but it can also be mellow, and whenever he finds the balance between those two things, that's when this album is firing on all cylinders. And honestly, you have to compliment the rest of the band as well because they do a great job at just whether developing a bass groove or getting into a great guitar lick. I love Revelation number 12 and Blood Honey, which we'll talk more about in just a moment, because there's great guitar solos, some really just cool guitar fills, and even some of the backing drumming. While I wouldn't say the drumming is the most standoutish thing about this album, it's still very good through and through. Jesus Crisis was one of the most buzzed about songs whenever this album went into its recording phase. I know a lot of people were wanting it, and I think that even though it's not a top favorite for me, I love the aggression that he's channeling here, and it feels more like classic Manson than we've gotten in a while, and I like that he's able to kind of go into this retro mood and maybe even mindset, and he gets into the space without it feeling too cheesy. There's a few moments that definitely do feel like that, but there's not too many to make this album get bogged down. There's not really problems that I have with individual songs so much as like a few things here and there. Like I already mentioned, the production thing maybe being a bit too crisp at times. There's a few tracks that I know on Saturnalia, I already mentioned that the length wasn't really a factor, but I could see it being a problem for some, and especially with repeated listens even for myself. I've already seen myself kind of noticing, I guess, the runtime, and maybe it could have been trimmed down a bit. There's like traces of some of these songs that feel a little bit too similar, done before. The lyrical content isn't super inventive throughout, but then again, you're probably not coming into this record expecting it to change any kind of game for Manson or for rock in general, and I don't think that it's a huge problem whatsoever, and for me personally, it didn't really detract all that much from my enjoyment of the album. Oh, don't think for a second I've forgotten. I haven't mentioned my absolute favorite on this album. I love the title track. I know that you know that I love We Know Where You Live. I've already talked about that a couple of times, but the one song that I haven't singled out and praised yet is Blood Honey, because this song is addictive. It's mesmerizing, and it shifts into something so much more than it starts off as, and I love that transformative feature to it. It brings in everything from like a more industrial synthesizer that just shifts past the 2-minute mark, and some electrifying guitars, and a song that seems to be about a relationship in a way, but perhaps Manson's relationship with people and his listeners and the music world in general. It's a very, very smart and well thought out tune, and I love the instrumental. It's so gripping, from its guitars, its deep bass, and those rooted drums. Everything about this song works for me, and I think it's one of Manson's best in quite a long time. Overall, I would say I am very much so enjoying this album. It definitely took me a good handful of listens to get into it. I had to listen to this one a little bit more than I normally do whenever preparing for a review, but I would say probably 5 or 6 listens in is whenever it really started hitting me. I started paying attention to the lyrical content more, focusing on some of the sonic avenues that they explored, and overall I'm very impressed. I'm glad that I explored this record and gave it the chance that it deserved. Even if you don't like it on the first listen, maybe play it again. Even if you don't agree with everything that's going on, just try it again. Trust me, it might be a grower for you. For me personally, I'm gonna give the new and 10th Marilyn Manson album, Heaven Upside Down, a light 4 out of 5. I'm not sure how the replay factor is going to be on this album. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section down below. That's one thing that I'm kind of divided on, because I kind of feel like some of them just maybe don't have the staying power that others do. Maybe they won't hold up as much in the long run, and I could see this kind of being like a 5 or 6 song type project that I pull away from, and I just listen to those and I don't come back to the full album. But We'll see. Time will tell, obviously, right? So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section down below. Please drop a like on this review while you're here. And if you're able to, please support on Patreon. It's that top link in the description. My patrons help videos like this keep coming on a weekly basis on this channel and beyond ARTV as well. So if you're able to, you can go directly to my Patreon by tapping that annotation in the corner. My Pale Emperor review is right over here, or another recent rock review right over here. All of my socials are in the description, and I'll see you very soon right here on ARTV.